Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 171, titled What Now, Devils Fans? ? I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios in the bunker of New Jersey. And for the last time from Tampa, Florida. And we're streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Nick, you started this rivalry. Suddenly, I had to put the college jersey on. And I don't know why, but I got a little mad. I was like, that's not going to happen. So
I was just trying to match my hat, man. I don't know what you're talking about. This whole rivalry business, I don't know. A West Virginia Penn State rivalry? Come on. They don't even let us play football anymore.
So is that a fan-sided hat you got on?
Yeah. It's the special gold from the last time. We used to do meetups back in 2019, and I met a bunch of the crew in Orlando. It was a fun time. Got a free dinner.
Very nice. Very nice. Oh, yeah, here, for the fans, this is the Let's Go Devils hat. Some merch that's in our research and development department that's going to be handled by Shorts Guy. First, I have to talk to him about that.
You know what I'm going to bring up when you bring up merch.
What's that?
Where's my shirt?
Oh, we're waiting for you to move.
Nah, I'm going to fight Shorts Guy and take his.
Shorts Guy's on hiatus. He's trying to get his doctorate degree done.
Oh, geez.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud.
You can't do anything about it now. But it's going to be a fun show. We got Alex Chauvancy, favorite of the Let's Go Devils podcast, from the Hockey Writers, coming on. And Robert Aitken from NorthJersey.com coming on, too. A couple of really smart guys. Alex, obviously, is well known around Devils community. He's just been crushing it with the statistics. He's kind of getting into.
He works hard.
He
works hard.
He's doing a lot of writing. He's doing a lot of analysis. So I'm really excited to get his opinion on kind of what he thinks now. I'm really excited to talk to him about, Sam, is about that Andre Palat contract. Because that contract has a lot of people thinking a lot of things. There's a couple people who think, it's not too bad. That's what the price of admission is in free agency. And, you're only paying him, $6 million a year. So that's not terrible. And then you have the other contingent that says that this is going to age like a fine milk. And it's going to be chunky before we know it. So I'm excited to see what he thinks of that contract.
Yeah, and Alex knows his stuff. I see a lot of the charts and infographics as well coming from his Twitter account. We got him and Robert Aitken at NorthJersey.com. So for those filing in on YouTube Live, I see you there, little Fireboy, Joseph, Jim, also... happy Devil's Wednesday to you, Mike Rossi. Cody's there. Rob Klobosis. I went to China Moon the other day. Great Chinese food there. Jason, happy Devil's Wednesday to you. But yeah. So what now? Nick, that's what I'm going to ask you. What now?
I don't know. I see. Here's the thing: is that I keep saying I think that the Devils have another move left in them, but then I look at the aspects of the move that they can make. I think we're down to two names: JT Miller and Vladimir Tarasenko. Vancouver still wants a nightmarish return. They want like a Matthew Tkachuk return for
keep dreaming.
Keep
dreaming.
Or they want like they want an insane return, and it's just not happening. And then with Tarasenko, it's just how desperate that they want to be to make this move, because they would get more for Vladimir Tarasenko at the deadline. That's just. But how do you trade him at the deadline if you're in it? Like, what if he has 20 goals at the deadline? He's on his way to 30 again. What do you do? You know what I mean? Like, so I think that the Devils might be done. I think there's a lot of free agents out there still that are interesting. So I think they'll make a move or two, a PTO, maybe even a small 1-year deal. But I think as far as like the big moves go, as far as the
blockbusters,
I don't think that I really thought Fitzgerald had another move up his sleeve, and then it just seems like when Tkachuk got traded. And here's the thing: is these guys go on vacation around now, and you don't see any moves in August. Nonezo. Maybe it's the, like a PTO, like I said. Maybe they sign a, like a 1-year deal, an easy thing, like some AHL deals, stuff like that, like small moves. But after Jesper Bratt's arbitration, which was August 3rd?
Mm-hmm. I should go get our next guest, shouldn't I?
Yeah, go get our next guest.
All right.
That's what, so after Jesper Bratt gets signed, sealed and delivered, after whether it goes to arbitration or whether the Devils make a deal beforehand, I think that the Devils are, they're working the phones, but I don't think that Tom Fitzgerald is terribly active right now. I think he was crazy active with Tkachuk, and he was crazy active with Gaudreau, and I don't think either of them wanted to come here. It really sounds like Tkachuk was looking for either St. Louis or no taxes. We don't provide either of those things. In fact, we're very taxed. And with Gaudreau, it just looked like he just. I don't know if I'm starting to think that apparently everybody in the national media thought that Gaudreau was just coming to New Jersey, which I just find bizarre still. Like, why? Just because he lives in New Jersey? So, and the other thing is that I heard in the Athletic Hockey Show, they were talking about something interesting about going home. And these star players don't really want to deal with the requests that come with going home. They don't want to deal with ticket calls and, can you get me in the suite? Can I meet Tarasenko? And, I don't think, apparently Tkachuk was thinking he didn't want to deal with that. But Sam, you're back. That was quick.
Very quick. Very quick. And I might as well add that sometimes it's hard to say no. When you go back home and people want stuff or whatever, it's, one of the hardest things in life is to say no. People go to therapy over it because they just can't say no.
It's easy. I say no to people.
I know, Nick, but you're like one of a kind. So when you're a one of a kind, the rest of us have to figure out how to say no. Sometimes I have to say no on this podcast. How many fans want to come on? And I'm going to be like, no, you're not coming on. I don't know who you are. But anyway, we know who this next guest is. His name is Alex Chauvancy. He's a Devils writer for the Hockey Writers. You can find him on Twitter at AlexC_THW. Alex, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. It's been a minute since we've had you on. It's just it's been a busy off season. We've been building a Rolodex, but I was like, what? I gotta send out the bat signal, call out Alex Chauvancy. We got to get him on the podcast because so much has happened, Alex, that we need to talk about.
Yeah, there's they may have not landed any of the star players out there, but it was a pretty busy off season once again. That's for sure.
So here's the thing: is that we know the Devils were directly tied to Gaudreau and were the last team remaining. That part we have confirmed. Besides Columbus, they missed out on that. We know that Fitzgerald at least made an attempt at Tkachuk. He did it before the draft. and I'm assuming he did it after the draft, missed out on that. You have to assume if they were in those two players that they were probably – they at least called – I think that he did confirm that Fiala was something they talked about, and I'm assuming that he at least called about DeBrincat. Well, all four of those players are on different teams, and none of them are the Devils. So is there like one player that you look at and you see the deal that it cost to get them? You see the deal that they signed. Is there any of those four players that you think the Devils are going to regret missing out on in the future?
So I don't think they're going to end up missing out on or regret missing out on Gaudreau too much. He is the oldest of those guys, and by the time he reaches the middle of that contract, he'll be 33, 34 years old. So I don't think they'll end up regretting that too much. Given what Tkachuk went for, I don't think they'll end. I mean, Tkachuk's a great player, but considering Florida gave up a first-line forward and a top-pair defenseman for him, I don't think they'll end up regretting missing that one either. The player I think that they'll regret most is Fiala. I just kind of think he fit what the team wants the most up front. He's really good in transition and just a really good offensive player. So I think that's the player they'll end up regretting the most. But it's also like I'm just not sure how interested they were in him. I don't remember who he said this to, but I remember Michael Russo saying on Twitter that the Devils weren't as interested as maybe some other people kind of led on to believe. So, I think Fiala is the one they'll regret the most. But I don't think there's really much they could do, especially if it's true that Fiala was just kind of intent on signing in Los Angeles and Los Angeles only. And there's not really much you can do if that's the case.
Yeah, and I think I remember during one. I mean, Fitzgerald had like 4 press conferences in like 2 weeks, but I think in one of them he said something to the effect of that Bill Guerin called him. So it sounded like Guerin was trying to make a move, but maybe Fiala kind of took the cards out of his hands by saying he was only going to sign in L.A.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Maybe he just wanted to go to like a bigger market or something like that. I thought, with the Devils and Nico Hischier and Fiala kind of having maybe a relationship, kind of like a friendship kind of thing, that would have kind of been enticing for Fiala to come to New Jersey, but I guess not. So if that's the case, there's not really much you could do. With DeBrincat, I think that would probably be the second person I think they'd end up regretting missing out on the most, just because he's a 40-goal scorer, and if you can score with Patrick Kane, you're going to be able to do it with Jack Hughes too. I think it's the only thing is in that case they probably would have had to given up the second overall pick, and there's a little bit of, I guess, cost uncertainty with him since he'll be a restricted free agent next summer with arbitration rights. So he doesn't really have much term. And I know Elliot Friedman had mentioned on an episode of 32 Thoughts that they were talking about DeBrincat for second overall, but they just weren't sure about it because he doesn't really have that much. He doesn't have, I guess, a long-term commitment right now. So, if you had traded for DeBrincat, let's say if they had traded second overall for DeBrincat and he doesn't re-sign in 2 years, then you just kind of like end up getting nothing out of that. You don't get a top prospect like Shimon Nemitz, and if DeBrincat leaves, that would really set the team back 2 years from now. So, you could say like they regret this person for one reason or another, or not. Kind of tough to say, but I don't really think in the long run they'll end up regretting missing out on any of these guys too much. But Fiala would be my pick for sure.
So they made a lot of moves. They still, they got a new defenseman on the right side. They got a new top 6 forward. They got a new goalie. They got a new assistant coach that people seem to really like. There's a lot to like about what's happened with the Devils. What was the move that you liked the most? What was the move that really stuck out to you that you're like, okay, this is a move pushing us in the right direction?
So I actually got a couple for this one. The one I liked the most for sure is hiring Andrew Burnett to be an assistant on Lindy Ruff's staff. It's just, it's kind of hard to look at what he did last season and not be impressed, just because he kind of had to take over unexpectedly after Joel Quenneville had to resign, because of the Kyle Beach case. And then he came in there and he won 51 games and was a Jack Adams finalist. And he got the Panthers to win their first playoff series since, 1996 or something like that, or maybe a little sooner, but still. It had been a long time since the Panthers had won a playoff series, so that was impressive. Everybody is pretty familiar with how much their power play struggled last season, and the Panthers had a pretty solid power play on their Burnett for 3 years. A lot of their forwards took steps forward under him too. Mason Marchment became, a top six winger. Carter Verhaeghe took a huge step forward. Sam Bennett kind of had a career revival when he got down to Florida. So there's really a lot to like about Burnett. And, of course, the 2 seasons of Lindy Ruff's tenure in New Jersey didn't go well. So if they get off to a slow start next season and they have to make a coaching change, you have your next coach right in line there with Burnett, and I would think the results would probably be pretty good with him as a head coach. The second move that I really like for the Devils was getting John Marino from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Even though they had to get rid of Ty Smith to do so, I just really like what Marino is going to add to the Devils' blue line. He might not have the offensive upside that Ty Smith could have one day, but I think the Devils really needed a defenseman like Marino in their lineup. He's just really good at defending the rush, and even though he doesn't have much offensive upside, he's a good skater, and he can move the puck up the ice effectively. But it's really what he does defensively that I think that they needed most. The only defenseman they really have on their roster before acquiring him that I guess had a similar makeup was Jonas Siegenthaler. So they really need someone who could kind of help them defend the rush, because their neutral zone defense last season was pretty terrible, and adding him, and I guess Brendan Smith to a lesser extent too, should help in that regard.
Yeah. Smith is an interesting one to see kind of what his role is and what he's going to end up doing. One name I noticed you didn't really mention there was Palat. 5-year deal, $6 million per. It seemed like they signed him in the aftermath of losing out of Johnny Gaudreau. So what do you make of this contract? Are you worried about it? Are you excited at least about the prospect of the beginning of it? Or do you think it was just a massive overpay? Do you think it's something that he'll grow into the what are you thinking here for Palat?
So I really like the player. He's just been a consistent, second line player basically his entire career. And he's still that even now. He's not really showing any signs of decline so far, even at 31 years old. So that's definitely a positive. But on the flip side, I am definitely worried about his contract. The money isn't awful, honestly. It's kind of in line with what Evolving Hockey had as a projection for him, even at 5 years. But giving 5 years to a 31-year-old forward always has, quite a bit of risk. I guess the good thing with him would be that he's not, he's not someone like Milan Lucic who plays a physical game and you could just fall off a cliff overnight. I think you're still probably going to get at least 2 good years out of Palat, maybe a 3 or 4 if you're lucky. But the term definitely scares me. It's, I guess, good that the Devils had a lot of cap space to work with this offseason, but it does feel like a bit of an overpay. And it could be a problem in a couple of years from now, but, I guess the Devils will just have to deal with that when the time comes. But I do like the player. I definitely think he's going to help. The Devils, they needed to add players who know how to win. That's something you need in the locker room, especially for a team that's as young as the Devils. Even by signing him and with the other additions they've made this offseason, they're still the 3rd youngest roster in the NHL as of now. So having a veteran like Palat, who's been to 4 Stanley Cups and has won 2 of them, will definitely help a young team learn how to win games a lot more consistently than they have the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. I think that winning mentality is definitely going to help. Just bringing that into the locker room, Like somebody like PK Subban is great for where the Devils were, but I think PK Subban's, I don't want to say his priorities are different. You know what I mean? I feel like he wants to be a part of the team, and that's great. You love that. But he's not going to yell at a guy if they're losing. I think he's a positive only kind of guy. When you bring in a Palat, who's used to going to the Stanley Cup final every single year, I think it's going to bring a different mentality in there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even Palat, I remember in the conference that he had after the Devils signed him, he said he's not necessarily a guy who will get up and yell. He's more of a lead by example kind of guy, which is also good. But he says he'll say something if something needs to be said, and you can't. I guess when you look at the free agent market this year, when it comes to adding some experience, you really probably couldn't have gotten better than Palat. I mean, 4 Stanley Cup appearances in 10 years he's been in the league.
Yeah.
So that definitely helps, and he's going to play second line minutes for them. The contract may not age well, but they should get a good few years out of him. And he's averaged 20 goals and 55 points per 82 games the last 3 seasons. He's definitely going to be a scoring upgrade, and they really needed to add some type of scoring this offseason. They couldn't have done anything there, so he will help.
So the last question I have for you, Alex, is have you changed your outlook? Have you changed what you think the Devils are going to be next season? We kept saying you only need a goalie. They got a goalie. It's an interesting name, at least. Are you different? Are you changing how you see this team?
Yeah, a little bit. Like you said, the wild card, which has really been the case for the last 2 seasons, I guess, and now going on a third, will be the goaltending. I thought with all the rumors that were going around before the draft and free agency, I thought that they were going to end up with Villano or Jack Campbell, but I had written back for the hockey writers maybe like a month or so before the draft that they could talk to the Washington Capitals about one of their goaltenders, and I mentioned Vitek Vanacek. He might not. You'll look at his numbers, and you're probably not going to think, well, how much is this guy going to help? He has a .908 save percentage for his career, but his 5-on-5 numbers were really good this past season. He was borderline top 10 in 5-on-5 save percentage and 5-on-5 high danger save percentage. I think he's like around 11th or 12th in each. And both those numbers had improved pretty significantly from where he was as a rookie in 2021. The only, question mark I have with him is what happens on the penalty kill, because his penalty kill numbers are not great, but he'll be playing in a different system here in New Jersey, and penalty kill samples are small, so it could just be noise. It'd be hard to figure out. There's no way to know until you see what he looks like in the Devils penalty killing system. If he's what he was this past season, and I guess really the first 2 seasons he's been in the league with the Capitals, the Devils should definitely win games more often than they have the last 2 seasons, but a lot of it also falls on Mackenzie Blackwood and, what's his status health-wise. How's his heel holding up? Is that something that was just a 1-year thing and now he's good to go? Or is that going to be something that's just a problem long-term and there's really going to be no way around it? So my outlook is, again, on goaltending. I think they have the pieces in place everywhere else to be competitive. You're going to get good seasons from Heischer, Bratt, and Jack Hughes again. I would probably think you're getting a step forward from Dawson Mercer and even Yegor Sharangovich. Their defense is probably the best it's been in years after getting Marino and adding Brendan Smith. It's just a deep group now. You should have 3 pretty decent defense pairs. It really falls on goaltending. And so if Vanacek and Blackwood can hold up and give them, slightly above average goaltending, I think they could be competing for the wild card, one of the wild card spots in the Metropolitan Division. But it's hard to say right now. I think they could definitely benefit from adding another scorer, but they got to sign just for Bratt to an extension first and see what that cap hit looks like before they, pursue it, because they don't have too much cap space left without having Miles Wood signed a new contract yet.
Well, Alex Chauvancy, it's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Great insight on a lot of those. There's been just a lot going on. It's hard to I'm sure it's hard to keep your head around it, trying to figure out what to write about, what to talk about, what to podcast about. And, you're doing a really good job of kind of focusing your articles. So I really love reading your stuff everywhere. Why don't you let the audience know where they can find your stuff? We got a lot of people watching live right now. Let them know where you can find all your pieces.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, AlexC_THW. I post all my articles there for the hockey writers. I'm also a guest contributor for Todd Cordell's Substack, Infernal Access. Usually right there. It depends what's going on, but usually 2 to 3 times a month. I will actually have an article there for Saturday. I even mentioned it, kind of previewed it a little bit here in the podcast before, but it will have something to do with their defense.
Nice. And
yeah, that's pretty much everywhere you can find me.
That's great. Alex Chauvancy, make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's a phenomenal follow on Twitter. AlexC_THW. He's always sharing his idea of stats and kind of putting together some of the analytics and putting it in a way that everybody can kind of digest. So, Alex, thanks so much for all you do. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll definitely have you on again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a good talk.
Thanks, Alex. Alex Chauvancy of the Hockey Writers here on the program. We're going to get our next guest very soon, right? It's supposed to.
Yeah.
I saw your note that right afterwards.
We going back to back. Oh, he left me. All right, I'm all by myself. No.
I thought we were supposed to go back to back.
Go. No, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. Go Penn State. No, don't go Penn State. Penn State stinks. A lot of good things coming from Alex there. The defensive part is the interesting thing because we got a unit this year that is just it blows my mind what it looks like on paper. Imagine this, that you have 2 first caliber defensemen on the left side in Jonas Siegenthaler, who signed a phenomenal contract. $3.4 million per year for one of the best defensive defensemen in the league. Let's go. That's taking a risk on a player that you should be taking a risk on. Because even if he drops off, it's the difference between a player like Siegenthaler and Smith. What Siegenthaler does is play mistake-free hockey, stop suppressing chances, things like that. That's something that's not going to fall off. Like Smith, who really needs those chances to be there. He takes a lot of chances. He takes a lot of risks. And they just weren't working out for him, and he lost his confidence. He lost his step a little bit. He was just being a little bit hesitant with a lot of his moves last year. I think he'll do good in Pittsburgh. I think we're going to look at that and be a little bit upset, but Marino's going to be phenomenal for us. And then you got on the right side 3 players who can play on the first line in Damon Severson, John Marino, and Dougie Hamilton. This defense is good, folks. I don't know what they're going to do with that 3rd spot on the left side, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do. And we got Robert Aitken from NorthJersey.com. This is a guy, he still writes about the Devils, guys. You got to go to NorthJersey.com to get the entire brevity of the situation when it comes to who's writing about the Devils. He's still putting out pieces. I'm excited to talk to him, have him on the podcast again. And, as far as what comes next, the title of our podcast tonight is What's Next? What are the Devils going to do next? I guess we'll have that conversation about what's going to happen next with Sam and Robert.
Oh yeah, he's on the hotline right now.
We're ready.
I was already. See, this is what I do with the members of the media. I bribe them with free drinks and food at Taj Lounge 97.3, where we do our game day lives with pucksandpitchforks.com's Vinny Parisi and I. So I was trying to make a little arrangement. I was trying to make a little small talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm just joking around. But his name is Robert Aitken. He is a writer at NorthJersey.com. One of my favorite writers. You can find him on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. Robert, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
Gentlemen, happy Devil's Wednesday, as you like to say.
Oh,
happy
nice.
Devil's Wednesday. We love it. We love it. Hey, that notice, we not only are you a guest, but I'm guessing you're a listener as well. You love to hear that, Robert.
And a good friend
Yep.
of the podcast, too.
All right,
multiple
Robert,
times.
let's jump right into this. It's been a little bit since we've talked to you. I think we haven't talked to you since the season. And a lot's happened since then. A lot of it's been probably bad. A little bit. Some of it. It depends on how you look at it. I guess it's better to have loved and lost than have never loved at all. Well, we've lost Matthew Tkachuk. We lost Johnny Gaudreau. We lost Kevin Fiala and Alex Brinkett. But with not making those moves, it's almost, you can argue addition by subtraction. Now you have Simon Nemec. You get to keep Alexander Holtz and see what he turns into. And you don't have to think about the aspect of trading away just for Bratt. So, in a way, Robert, I guess I'm asking, do you think maybe the Devils are better off keeping all the pieces and seeing what's next?
I do, honestly. I look at it and I think, this was an off season where Tom Fitzgerald was basically drawing a line in the sand and saying who wants to be here and who doesn't want to be here. I actually asked him, and you can see that out on social media when the Devils posted out. I asked him about some of those trade rumors they were involved in before the draft, with Fiala, the Brinkett, and all that stuff, and kind of asked him, is there maybe hindsight's 20/20, but do you maybe have regret of not getting involved? And I'm going to read a quote from you, a quote from Fitzgerald to you, if you don't mind, about what Fitzgerald said after he took a pause there for a minute. He said, and I'll quote Thomas Fitzgerald here, "I think there's a message you're sending your team if you're continually selling off. I knew there was a concern or a thought of some of our players of where we were going. I've got to conduct my business, but there's also something to the locker room and making sure our players believe we are going in the right direction. We are trying to win hockey games and putting the best team on the ice." End quote. So I look at that and say Fitzgerald went to guys and said, who wants to be here? Who wants to play with Nico Hischier? Who wants to play with Jack Hughes? Who wants to play with these young prospects we've been able to bring in? And if you don't want to be here, don't be here.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot. I think that, there's always going to be a little bit of a macho, a little bit. There's a certain mindset that you have to be in to get to that level of sport. A certain dedication to the craft as well as to the team. But there's always going to be doubts when you're on a team that's made the playoffs one time in 10 years. And that's part of it. But when you can kind of see the forest through the trees and you can kind of see what they're building here, is that kind of what you're thinking that Tom Fitzgerald is saying here? He needs his players to see the forest through the trees?
Sure. I mean, you look at the talent that's here, and you look at New Jersey just as a community itself. I mean, when New Jersey embraces you, you don't have to go much further than looking at guys like Ken Danico, guys like Martin Brodeur. When you are, revered in this state, they'll revere you forever. Chico Resch, who came in at the very early, the very early seasons of the Devils, is still revered as a legend in the franchise, despite the fact that he didn't play a whole lot with the team. So it's really like that kind of mentality of, we're a smaller we're a smaller market. We're not as big as Columbus. Believe it or not, Columbus is about 3 times the size of Newark in terms of population. So it is one of the smaller markets in the NHL, but there's certainly a rabid fan base, probably to say the least. And, if you win here, you'll be remembered forever.
That's the thing. You see how we treat Brodeur, and Brodeur's back in the building. You see how we treat Stevens. Stevens is always coming back and coaching with the team. Elias, same thing. Travis Zajac, same thing. It's a franchise that holds its stars up high. It's interesting because it's a different ownership group from when the glory years of this team. But you talked about the players in the building and kind of look who we have. Look at the people who are buying in. But the Devils are still going to find themselves as part of these rumors. Everybody's going to look at who's next. And I said earlier in the podcast, it seems like the only two players left to be that next guy is JT Miller of the Vancouver Canucks and Vladimir Tarasenko with the St. Louis Blues. There's two very major things holding it back. One is that the asking price for Miller is phenomenal and insane. And two, that Tarasenko, I think the return on Tarasenko would be better at the trade deadline. But that being said, do you think the Devils are still trying to make a big move in the top six?
I think Tom Fitzgerald's phone has not stopped really since the start of July, or honestly before that. He's been involved in a lot of these major deals, major trades, major signings throughout the NHL. He's been a contender in a lot of these things, and I think he's certainly entered into talks for both of those guys. Whether or not it's going to happen, I personally don't think so. You just look at the situation with the roster and where things might have to shake out. There has to be a spot for one of those guys. There has to be spots even for the guys like Alexander Holtz, like Tyce Thompson, who really impressed at development camp. You look at guys like that. What do you do with Miles Wood? What do you do with Jesper Bratt? Because his arbitration hearing is a week from today, and we'll find out a little bit more when that comes through. But people on social media, obviously, they just want to say, well, just get rid of someone like Andreas Janssen. Well, the one thing that really keep in mind for a guy like Janssen has a 10-team no-trade clause right now. So You can't just necessarily move him anywhere if you want to, but because that usually seems to be the odd man out in a lot of people's minds, that if you're going to get rid of somebody, that maybe Janssen is one more deal. Maybe you can pull off a deal similar to what you did with Zacha. But it might not be as cut and dry as what people might want it to be.
And that makes sense. I wasn't aware of. Maybe I didn't know about Johnson's no trade clause. Just in my head, I wasn't playing around with that when I was thinking of what they could do next. But you're right. It's a give and take. And you saw the Philadelphia Flyers literally refused to make a move to drop JVR's contract to sign Johnny Gaudreau, the hometown boy who is going to come and save the franchise. So, the price to move these deals is not cheap.
You're right. And if you remember when Janssen came in, Andreas came because it was a salary dump at Toronto. So the Devils were in a position where they have a big cap and they can take on a guy like that and take on a big salary. And now the Devils are in the opposite direction, where now they have a salary that they're looking to dump on somebody else. So to see in 2 years that shift in the team, that should tell you that things are progressing, things are moving compared to how things were really at the start of Tom Fitzgerald's tenure.
So let's move to the next subject. Let's look ahead of the season. You could construct a lineup right now. It's not bad for the New Jersey Devils. There's plenty of players that can play in the top six. There's a plethora of players that play in the bottom six. You got 6 really decent defensemen, maybe even good, dare I say. And then you got your 2 goalies. You got 3 once Jonathan Bernier comes back. What is your outlook for the season if the Devils go into the season as currently constructed?
Well, a lot of people, when they ask this question, they talk about this, they immediately go to the standings and they look at the points and look at the points of playoff teams from this past year. And there's a 37-point differential between the Devils right now and what would have been a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference this year. Do I think they're going to make it 37 points and make up all that ground? Probably not. Do I think that the last playoff spot in the East is going to be exactly 100 points? Probably not. You have to remember with this past season, the amount of injuries that this team had, the amount of illness that this team had, they were begging the NHL to be shut down when they literally could not field an entire team in Detroit. They couldn't pull anyone from Utica because they had a COVID outbreak. You had 7 goalies from this team that played. And the one who had the most games played is not even in the top 50 in the NHL in terms of goals played. That was Nico Dawes, who played 25. So just imagining a regular year for this team, which is you would think is not asking a lot, but they haven't had a regular year in at least 3 years, just in terms of being able to conduct business in a regular manner. Just that alone, added with their young pieces kind of being able to grow and develop, grow that chemistry, you have to imagine that the gap is going to be shortened. Are they going to be a 100-point team? That's hard to say, but are they going to be in the conversation? I think just like being in the conversation in the off season with some of these free agents, they're going to be in the conversation.
And you love to hear that. You love to hear that's the one thing about the Devils now is you do hear that they're in the conversation. Whether that's for the big name free agent, whether that's for a team that can make a jump, a team that could be. I think that it's a player that could do really well. One last thing I want to ask you, Robert. Let's talk about the front office. Let's talk about Lindy Ruff. They've made these moves again. The betting odds are that Lindy Ruff is the odds-on favorite to be first coach fired. I think that's extreme. I think they want to give Lindy Ruff a chance this season, a legit chance. But with the signing of Andrew Burnett, who knows what any of this means? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about the stress level that's on the team this season?
I think that Lindy Ruff's seat is certainly warm. I don't know how hot it necessarily is. I don't know how much of a hot seat that he's sitting on right now. Really, from what you just said and what I was kind of saying a second ago, do you really have an opportunity to see what a Lindy Ruff run Devils team has looked like? Not quite, with so much injury, so much illness, 2 shutdowns in consecutive years. They're giving Lindy Ruff an opportunity to really show what he has to do. Is he under some pressure? Absolutely. But I would imagine that he's not the only one. You look at the outlook for this team beyond this season. You have guys like Tatar, going to be a UFA after this year. You have a guy like Igor Sharangovich, who's going to be an RFA after this year. Mackenzie Blackwood, I would imagine, certainly is going to be scrutinized a lot for the play that he's going to have this year. So I don't think it's just Lindy Ruff that has to be worried about his job. And when in the off season, I had to basically tell Devils fans, yes, Lindy Ruff is still the coach here. No, there's no conspiracy theory that he is fired and just no one said anything about it. I believe that the job of Tom Fitzgerald and Lindy Ruff are tied to one another. And I think it's, like it or not, for someone like Tom Fitzgerald, he knows that he's tied to a guy like Lindy Ruff. And quite frankly, I think a job for someone like Mackenzie Blackwood might be tied to those guys as well. So you want to be able to see those guys perform going into this season, because really outside of guys like Hughes, Heischer, Palat, Hamilton, everyone else is basically playing for their future in Major.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said, Robert. Robert, let everybody know what you're working on. What's your next Devils piece that's coming out on NorthJersey.com, and where can they find you?
Well, first off, let me just say to you guys, I know you guys are supporters of my work, and to the people that are watching this podcast, just the amount of response that I've been able to have and that I've had through NorthJersey.com for Devils coverage. I know there's been a lot of talk about, Devils coverage really from newspaper to newspaper and whether or not it's out there. You guys came out and supported me. You guys came out and supported my outlet this past month with draft coverage, free agent coverage. Please continue to do that. Do that for me and for other people out there. The more you do that, the more you're going to see stuff like this. You can find me on NorthJersey.com. You can find me on social media. I'm often tweeting, and I'm usually responding to people that are tweeting even just ridiculous things at me. So, feel free to open the conversation up, and we'll keep talking.
We love to talk. Do you have a piece coming out this week, or do you have a piece up that you're excited about?
Not at the moment. It's kind of a low period, but I will be kind of keeping my eyes on these arbitrations in the coming days. Miles Wood, I think, is going to be a really interesting one to see what happens there. And really, once the Jesper Bratt situation is settled, I would imagine it might be an overall recap of the offseason coming up.
All right, Robert Aitken, NorthJersey.com. Keep supporting the papers, and they'll keep turning out Devils coverage. It's a give and take, folks. I think they heard us this year. I think they heard us with what we said about the no beat reporter thing, which I always took a little bit of offense to. But it's. I think that they heard us. I think that there's a push to get more Devils coverage, and we love to hear that. So, Robert, thanks again so much for coming on.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Robert. That's Robert Aitken of NorthJersey.com. Also, still the Bergen record? Is it still a Bergen record? Do they still?
It's like NJ.com. Is it still the Star Ledger? Is that it's the New Jersey paper thing is. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But we know it's NorthJersey.com.
You know what? I used to, when I went off to college, when I came home, my dad had a pile of Star Ledgers for me to read, because I love the Star Ledger to risk share,
Yeah, it's the thing. It's just different now. It's so information is so accessible right now, and that's kind of. I think that's the biggest difference in our world. Not to get like philosophical. Wow, I can't philosophical on you. I think that just the instant information has changed our world more than anything else. So that's just kind of my my 2 cents. Maybe I'm saying that as a journalist, Sam. Maybe that's my last mention of being a journalist on this podcast. Maybe that's what that is.
You know what? I don't know what's professional, what's not. It's kind of like the PA announcer thing. Oh, we need to put a professional in there. But what constitutes as professional? Experience? Is it doing pretty well? You have to start somewhere with these things, right? What is professional? Are we professional broadcasters?
I was going to say, are we professional? Am I a professional writer?
I think you are. You definitely are, because you follow certain principles, like the editing. Like when you and I go back and forth in my articles, first off, you look at it and you're like, Sam, what the heck is this? We're like, well, I try to write something. It's like, but you need to have complete sentences, Sam.
I don't say that to you. No, you're going to scare away all my other writers.
I'm just kidding around. But
I'm very nice. I'm easy to work for.
There's certain professionalism that's involved in each other's craft. I think that I am a professional content engineer. I mean, we put out some great live streaming content, whether we're on location or not. But what constitutes professional? Like professional hockey players. There's different levels of that profession. So, I think that word's subjective, because that word's been used recently since my last article on pucksandpitchforks.com. If you haven't read it yet, it's wrote about, again, another polarizing subject matter outside of Devils hockey on the ice. And, check it out, pucksandpitchforks.com. But, what is a professional? I don't know. I in today's age, I don't know what's what anymore.
Yeah. But that's all I got, Sam.
That's a Blue Report topic. What I mean? That's not what I'll talk about on Blue Report, not on State of the Fan Address.
Yeah, we had to let the guests do the talking. We had some phenomenal guests today. We have guests going on the next couple weeks. I got, Sam, I'm looking at the calendar. I got guested up for every single week, almost through August. And then I have another one for September already locked in.
Wow. You're that booked, huh?
We're working.
You're that booked.
We're working.
I'm going to start
People
working
want to keep
guests
talking
myself.
hockey with us, Sam.
I'm going to start working guests myself. They're like, you don't need to go to your PR and compliance people. You just come onto the podcast. We just promise we won't, ambush you with questions.
It's one thing. It's one thing we're trying not to do. But yeah, Sam, that's all I got. You got anything?
Oh, okay. Well, I just, again, congratulations. You put that tweet out earlier today that you guys had an amazing July on pucksandpitchforks.com because of all the free agent news. Nick, if you wouldn't mind explaining, or you want me to explain that, I guess pucksandpitchforks.com hit a $500,000.
Another record
website
for pucksandpitchforks.com. 500,000 views in 1 month, Sam. Half a million views. Do you know what my goal was for this year, Sam? My goal was 3 million views. We got 500,000 in a month. And we're even more than that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you the up to the second numbers right now, Sam. I'm going to tell you the exact amount of views that pucksandpitchforks.com has in the month of July. We are at, I hit the wrong button. We are at, drumroll, 537,563 views.
Wow.
And this is the time where I tell you, if you're not on the train, if you're looking to write and get writing experience and you're not applying to pucksandpitchforks.com, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you could be part of these 537,563 views. I had a guy, Sam, who started, I think, Saturday, wrote an article. His article did. I'm trying to get just his. Hold, please.
Hold on a second.
He did one article.
Jonathan Bailey. Okay.
Jonathan Bailey did one article. 55,000 views.
Wow.
One article, Sam.
Wow. That's amazing.
He's gonna get a nice little paycheck for that.
Yeah. I'm telling you. The money flows our way, and if we write enough articles, maybe we could buy the team.
That's the ticket, Sam. That is the ticket.
Well, no, the ticket is to write these articles so you have the money to play Mega Millions, then buy the team.
Now you're talking. Let's get this. Let's turn this into cash. I'm ready, Sam.
Before we go, I just want to brag about our numbers as well here on the Let's Go Devils podcast. Currently, we're at a record territory for this month, and the month hasn't ended. We're at 27,262 downloads. So we're way past our previous record of 20,000 in a month, but we're about to approach 30,000, and we are about to hit 340,000 lifetime downloads as we approach our 5th year anniversary of this fine podcast. So just wanted to, brag a little bit. You know how, you want to be as a producer, pat yourself on the back, like some producers do, pat yourself on the back, a job well done, that you're the best in the industry, and then just tweet about it and retweet about it. Anyway, sorry. I want to thank Alex Chauvancy for coming on, Hockey Writers, and Robert Aitken of NorthJersey.com. Thank you. We are loaded with guests, as what Nick said on the State of the Fan Address. Nick will be coming to you live from a different location next week. So Nick, you and I have to figure that one out, because you're coming up north. We're gonna have the welcome mat rolled out for you.
I'm ready. Make it red, Sam. Make it red, like Devils red.
Yes. All right. Just
find the music here.
I found it. Thank you, everybody. Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, Twitch. Everybody dropping the podcast at midnight. for your morning and afternoon commute. We'll report tomorrow. We're going to keep it rolling every day. Solid month, solid fans. Keep it here. Till next time, let's go Devils.